Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. I'm trying to see how many different ways I can say that and give it a little different inflection. We're in the studio today with my studio, John B, in the place to be. John, what's good? What's crack-a-lacking?
Hello. Staying warm.
Did you like how I asked you that urban question? What's crack-a-lacking?
What's
Crack-a-lacking? You good, John?
I'm good.
All right. For those of you who are listening via social media, you'll know that today is probably one of the warmest days that we've had this year for the holiday season. No storms, nothing bad happening outside. Just a little bit of ice and sleep, but it's all good. We also have in the studio with us, coming in from the home studio, Mark Bassett, my co-host. What's going on, Mark?
Hey, now down from my my man cave.
In your man cave. What I love, Mark, what I love is that every time you come on location, you make sure you give us a very unique background. Just take a quick second. People don't understand that you're not just a collector of, what was it, tchotchkes?
Well, I am. I have Christmas, a huge collection.
Not only. Okay, and that was like knickknacks, right? Tchotchkes.
Yeah, tchotchkes, knickknacks.
You not only, I'm trying to use this terminology that I'm learning, this white folk vernacular that y'all teaching me. You're not only a purveyor of tchotchkes, but you have a number of things that you collect. Share with us what's behind you, Mark.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of vintage movie posters from primarily the 50s and 60s. I have them on a few other walls. This one's got The Wrath of God. I'm Catholic. What I loved about it, it's got this priest, and that's out there with a machine gun, and he's not exactly what the Lord had in mind. Then I've got two vintage sci-fi posters. The one behind me is the Beach Girls and the Monster, and then I've got Blackula over in the corner. I've always
my
liked
man Blackula.
Yeah.
I've come to suck your blood. Now, wait a minute, Mark. The one that's over your left shoulder with the big spider. Is that like Attack of the Killer Spiders or whatever?
It's Cosmic Monsters. It's, probably, I've never seen this one. I usually try to see the movie of the posters I have. This one, I'm guessing, the spider got radiation, so he's huge, is my guess.
Yeah, I remember seeing something of that nature probably when I was a really little kid. It was probably like 79, 80 or something like that. And I was wondering if that's what that movie was.
Yeah, I have another wall with kind of like Frankie Valli or Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello movie poster.
Yeah. One of those. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, we're all in the studio today. We've got some interesting stuff to talk about right now, and I want to make sure that we do so. I want to give a shout out to those that are in a social media stream. We always want to remind you to go and like our pages. If you're on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, go back and like those pages. If you're listening to this on YouTube, which I found out, hey guys, that a lot of people don't want to be on social media, so they've been checking out our YouTube channel and listening on YouTube. Hey, however you do it, well, like it, set a reminder. What do you do on YouTube?
You like it, you share it, you comment.
No, there's another one though. There's you become what is it?
Subscribe.
You subscribe. That's what we want you to subscribe.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember what it was. So go do all of those things, cool things that you do on social media, and that would be great. I want to get right into talking about things because Mark, last week, Mark, who happens to be our resident chemistry expert, he's our expert in chemistry, Dr. Dr.
I don't
Mark.
know that I'm an expert in chemistry. I'm just more of an expert than you two. So.
We were talking. I want to pick up where we talked. We talked about that train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, and there's been a lot of conversation about that lately. You just really can't miss it. And these were the things that I was thinking about last week when we were having our conversation. Once again, I'll just refresh the memory of those who don't remember these very easily rememberable chemicals: vinyl chloride, butyl acrylate, ethyl acrylate, ethylene glycol, monobutyl ether, which is an ether. These things were released. You mentioned that One of them, which I can't remember what you said was the most toxic, Mark, and I don't recall.
I believe vinyl chloride was the only one that was actually, at the time when I had read the articles, was the only one that had actually been released. Those other chemicals were in the cars, but had not been released. But vinyl chloride is, I think, by far the most toxic of all of those.
And you said that there was a controlled burn that they did at that time.
That's what I read. Yeah, at the time.
Well, yeah. No, I think that you're right. Because one of the things is, since then, of course, the community has been saying that they've been checking their nearby streams, and they're seeing, you get that oil look where you can tell that the chemicals are on top of the water. It's in streams and rivers and in their backyards. And the children have been going to the doctor with these, saying, hey, my skin is burning, and they're breaking out with rashes, and it's kind of becoming a thing. And so the people were angry that the EPA was not a part of the conversation during the controlled burn offs of the chemical, which you were saying, it's best to kind of get rid of it. That's one of the ways to get rid of it is a slow controlled burn. Well, so Mark, I'm just curious. So my thing, and not conspiracy theories, I just think that our government likes us to be dumb when convenient for the government. Just kind of like we talked about the big white things that were floating in the air, the Chinese lanterns that they've sent over here, because they're not spy equipment, they're just Chinese lanterns. They just happen to come across the ocean, or across Alaska. Those things taking place, I just think that we don't know until we know, and then once we find out, then the government is like, oh wow, we've never seen this before, and it's something that's been happening. Mark, what is there that can be done considering these issues and these chemicals that this community, I mean, do we just kind of throw more dirt on top of the soil and just keep going and hoping that Mother Nature rinses?
Well, I certainly am not an expert on this particular chemical, or once it's been released, what you can.
Mark, nobody expects you to be an expert. We just want you to have an opinion.
Yeah, well, I don't know what you can do if it's dispersed across the, if it's in the streams and stuff. I'm assuming you can potentially do something, but if it's floating on the top, then it's not soluble. And I thought vinyl chloride.
And again, that means what, Mark? We have a very smart audience, but
it's like oil and water; they don't mix together, But my impression is vinyl chloride in and of itself is naturally a gas, so vinyl chloride shouldn't be floating on the water. It wouldn't be floating on the water. It would be potentially some other chemical, whether when you burn it, it decomposes to something. What it decomposes to. Again, it should be CO2 and, oxygen. So, I don't know what's going on over there. I mean, again, it would be pretty easy to collect what's floating on the top of the water and test what it is.
Yeah. And the other thing I thought, Mark, was that, these solid chemicals, if they're contained and they're isolated is one thing, but if they have an opportunity to mix, we know that water, temperature, a destabilization of temperature gives them the ability to kind of react with one another. And so we could really receive some other types of chemicals that, if you understand how heat and moisture and those things affect chemicals, we could be ending up with some other things that maybe we weren't anticipating to be a problem in those areas as well.
Could be. Again, I think this one you typically get a chlorine compound, so maybe HCl or something.
Yep.
And again, the level of the concentration in which you're exposed to it matters as well. So if you're exposed to it in parts per trillion, it's not nearly as dangerous as if you're exposed to it as, parts per thousands. And, as this thing is diffusing, it becomes less and less dangerous, frankly.
Well, that's what they say. You know what made me mad though? I'm not sure if it was the government or from someone from the EPA showed up, and they did that whole, I'm going to drink a glass of water. If you remember, I think it was President Obama that went down during the Flint water crisis after they were cleaning up. It was like, look, I'm going to drink a glass of water. And they do these stage photo ops. And I was just sitting there like, if there's anything wrong with that water, I pray that he just kills over as he does this. It just made me like, I don't know why.
Something tells me they've tested the water. I mean, again, there is science to a lot of these things, and I know what you think about the government, but the EPA, having dealt with the EPA, is not there to make the life of a business easier. It's just not.
Well, no, Mark, and let me correct you. It's not what I think about the government.
Okay.
I just don't trust entities that have agendas at large. And the government isn't an entity that has kind of their own agenda in terms of what they want to put forth, and what's important to the government is important to the government when it's important to the government. And too many times, people and their well-being has not necessarily been the thing that has often been most important to the government. So that's what I say. But Jonathan, you look curious and like you're going to say something.
Well, I think that this has been going on for a very, very long time, but it's been a few weeks now, and finally it's coming to the forefront. The balloons have moved aside.
Yes,
and we get to actually hear what's kind of going on. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of staged, like, no, everything's fine.
Yeah,
everything's okay.
Silkwood.
Yeah, and I think that like social media and stuff has pushed it. Now it's dangerous because social media and stuff, there are people blowing it out of proportion and putting false things out there about this. I've seen plenty of that. Yeah. But I think that it's I think that it is worse than we're being led to believe. And I think that certainly as far as the EPA is concerned, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. I understand that they're not there to do the bidding of the company. They're not there to help out the company at all. But if it behooves the government to have people living in that town and going about their business in that town, then they'll lie about it.
And this is where I just don't believe that, you guys, because ultimately the EPA.
Mark, that's because you're an older, cynical white guy. We're cynics. You believe in the government.
The EPA is full of people, and people aren't going to basically. There's not a lot of people that are going to go like, I'm going to turn people are being poisoned here. I'm going to turn a blind eye to this. Yeah, I mean, I think we forget when we go they, and it's an agency. An agency is filled with people that, aren't going to put, a whole community at risk because it's to their benefit.
And you really believe that, Mark? That's the amazing. That's why I love you. You really believe that. I think
I do believe that.
You have I'm proud to be an American. Can we play that right now?
I
really believe Mark is believing what he said. But Roderick McCullough,
just think that would become so public so fast that, hey, there would be a disgruntled EPA employee that going like, we're putting a whole community at risk here by lying to the public. And I just don't think
Mark, it happens all the time.
I just don't think that's happening here. I just don't. So,
well, I want to say, as Roderick McCullough, who's in the social media stream, he says public safety is generally the trade-off when profit is involved. Naive Donna Shaw that have bills and mortgages.
But the company isn't making the decisions here. The EPA is making a decision here, and the EPA has no profit or loss in this discussion.
100%. I agree. On the face of that, I would agree with you 1,000%. But I want to make sure that we keep that in mind because it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I was listening to some interviews of once I get caught up in and I go down the rabbit hole, I got to go to other sources and find out what's that. I get caught up, and I was looking I'm like now on British TV reading about what's happening in Palestine, Ohio. But they were talking about how some of the residents were like, listen, the damage is pretty much done. We'll find out, when we're growing extra ears and fingers, 15, 20 years from now. But we're going to see what's going to happen. We're going to keep moving because I want to make sure that we give ourselves ample time to talk about the major issue today. And I know that the third thing that's hot off the press is something that's going to be that's really interesting to me. And I went down the rabbit hole. So you guys are going to go with me. President Biden, as I put in my notes.
You trying to make me related to him there? Biden?
President Biden, what do you guys think about this trip that he made? I was just kind of thought it was interesting that I don't know how a U.S. president can make an undisclosed secret trip, but according to sources, he made a secret trip to Ukraine, the war front. Another kind of crazy thought. What are your thoughts about this? Is this another example of necessary movements, or is this once again a political stunt?
I don't know. I mean, the fact that it wasn't publicized, eventually it came out, obviously, but there was not a lot of fanfare. I think I don't believe this one, for me, and again, just my personal gut reaction is this isn't political.
Okay.
It's more of a personal thing of like, he thought this was important to do. I think to me, the interesting thing is we've been trying to kind of quote unquote stay out of it by not supplying things directly or just supplying goods. Now you literally are, a president is showing up in the Ukraine. That's the next level of support for Ukraine in this conflict. And so to me, it just changes the level of engagement of the U.S. government in support of Ukraine.
Okay, Jonathan, he's over here with all of his youthful charm and smiling just ear to ear.
It was a photo op. That's my take on it. The whole, like,
how does a U.S. president go to a war zone and it not?
The cameras were there.
They did catch it on camera.
I don't. Volodymyr Zelensky, while he has done great,
say that again.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Oh,
that's
you see,
good. I don't think I can.
That is good.
Yeah.
While he has
They're teaching you something in these schools.
Great things since the war began. There were all sorts of corruption allegations hurled towards him before this war began, and he was a charlatan. Kind of was my take on him before, and it's the way that he walks around in military fatigues everywhere.
Who is this?
The president of Ukraine.
Yeah, he makes me mad.
I think it's just a way of putting on another show. And
is it just me? I mean, because this little dude, first of all, he used to be a comedian, but I think he's all of 5'2", and I think he has kind
small. Okay,
he's a pocket protector. You can pick him up and put him in your pocket.
Oh, come on now, Kevin Hart's small too.
They are both small. I'm sorry, Jonathan, but I get angry when they put him on. What did they put him on last year? The Oscars or something? Or
did they? He was at the. He addressed the U.S. Congress, didn't he? Or the United?
Yeah, he did that too. But what makes me so mad is that you got this little guy out here. Like, you're the president.
What does size got to do with it, Kareem? What does size have to do with it?
Size has nothing to do with it. It just makes me more mad that he's this little guy. Anyways.
Okay.
But what makes me mad is the posture in which he takes in telling the United States and other nations what they should be doing. And I'm just kind of sitting there thinking to myself, like, we don't have to do nothing. This is Ukraine, not the United States. And the audacity of you to take the tone instead of saying, hey, we need your support. You're not moving fast enough. This is like, dude, like, pull yourself together. We are now. This is where I get real red, white, and blue on you. We are the United States of America. We have issues and things of our own. We save the world when it seems to be coming to its demise. You need to, pull a ticket, stand in line. We understand that this is important. We're going to get to this issue, but we're going to handle it as it relates to our interests as a nation. And you cannot make us or feel bad about it. And I sometimes think that we get punked into doing stuff that we should not do as a nation. And I'm like, dude, like, take a pause, like, take a chill pill. You need to really relax. Or guess what? We'll continue to take care of the issues we have in our nation, such as those who don't have health care, such as the opioid crisis. We have a number of things that we could be, such as education. We don't have the money, but we're spending billions upon billions of dollars in a country that I'm not trying to be mean, but they don't care about black people anyway. So I'm not too pressed about, what happens to you. I don't want anyone to have to suffer the atrocities that they're suffering. But I think he needs to take a chill pill and realize that you are at the mercy of another country. And I'm not just talking about the United States, I'm talking about all of the nations. We could sit here and watch Russia just take it over. That's all I'm saying, Mark. So
Jonathan's got his hand raised. I thought he wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I was just signaling that we have 5 minutes left here.
He was telling me I'm talking too much.
I hear what you're saying, and I kind of agree. I don't like his kind of lecturing countries.
Yeah.
I wouldn't approach it that way either. That said, it's a bigger issue than just Ukraine. Yeah. I think we need to do a whole show on size discrimination.
Why does
you clearly have a size issue in terms of discrimination against people of size.
Oh my Lord, Rod, I certainly, I think. Oh, okay. I guess if they were talking about a black man, it'd be something different, right? So I'm gonna, Rod. Let me see if I can correct this in the couple minutes we have here. I appreciate you, Rod. I certainly almost vertically challenge people. It wasn't appropriate for me to say that. I'm working on my political. It was inappropriate for me to say that. I should have been more thoughtful in the word and my word usage. I apologize. I do not have any issues with people, and I'm going to better educate myself and equip myself, and learn how I should better communicate when I'm talking about those things. Rod, how did I do? I hope you received my apology. For those of you who were vertically challenged out there, that was not my intent. I hope that works.
That was so good. That was such a good.
Was that good?
Did you have that scripted out?
No, I'm working on it. I'm sincere in what I say. So, Rod, thank you. I see that you're smiling. Thank you. I am laughing with you and not at you, and I appreciate you in this moment. All right, let me just really quick 3 minutes. It's really going to take a lifetime to talk about this. This should be a whole show because this is crazy. Do you guys ever watch on TV? I Almost Got Away with It. That's the name of a show. I Almost Got Away with It.
I've seen it once or twice, but I don't watch it kind of regularly.
What about you, Jonathan?
Same thing. I've seen that. I've seen things like it, but
okay. So have you guys paid? We are good, my brother. I have been. Thank you, Rod. I appreciate it. I pray that the rest of the world has as much grace as Rod has shown me here today. Thank you, Rod. But there is this Murdaugh.
Yeah.
Okay,
Murdaugh down in South Carolina.
Oh my gosh! I don't know where I have been. I've been looking at the other guy who they think killed his wife. But as I was going through my news selections, I ran across this because I guess the trial is underway now. And have you guys had an opportunity to see this at all?
This one I've seen, like the 2-hour Dateline show on this whole thing before the trial started. So I've seen this one. It's been a little while ago, but I've seen it. Yeah.
All right. So for our listeners, this is if you like Sidney Sheldon, who are some Patterson, some of those great mystery writers. If you like them, you got to tune into the story about what's happening with Alex Murdaugh and his murder trial. It is absolutely
murder his wife and his son.
His wife and his son is what he's being accused of. But it starts all the way back in 2019 with with a young lady who was on a boat or who was on a beach.
The
son, Paul Murdaugh, who is the one that is now murdered, and they've dropped charges since he's dead. We can't take him to trial. But he was being accused of being involved with the murder of a Sally, and I don't remember her last name. That situation goes through. There are
just to give some background. He was drunk driving a boat.
Yes.
Got into an accident. She fell off and drowned, and so he was going to be on trial for that.
There you go. And it is the most. I mean, when you talk about a plotted story, twists and turns, you bring in an insurance company. He's an attorney. He's stealing money from his firm. They find out.
And from clients.
He finds out. He's found out about this. They then he stages his own suicide attempt.
Murder. Yeah, it's his own murder.
Yeah, his own murder. The guy shoots him in the head. He survives. He's overheard telling the truth to his son that he wanted his son to get the $10 million. And it is the most remarkable story ever.
Yeah, this is a kind of a powerful family in rural South Carolina with multi-generation kind of power.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. So tune into that story because I think that's going to be something that's worth talking about and moving forward. I know that there's a story on the true crime story that's coming out regarding this, but it is interesting. Murder, mystery, espionage. Stay tuned. We're going to be back with more United Shades of Gray.
I can't hear you.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America. We were talking before break about the Murdoch trial, but we're transitioning as we turn in. Mark, I don't know if you were able to read my hands. It made me think about the lady who signed up to be a sign language deaf interpreter and didn't understand sign language. She got away with it. They hired her. She was at a police briefing with the police chief. And you remember this? And she's signing, and everyone at home is like, "What the heck is she saying?" It is the most remarkable thing.
Never heard that one.
Do your due diligence. Check the background sources. I want us to move. Today we're going to talk about something. We talk a lot about what we can do together, and I thought about this. I said, what are the most polarizing topics that we have that are really, threatening our democracy? So today's show technically is the polarization of America's democracy. And I sent you guys over what Pew Research says when they did their research, what were the top 7 issues that were most polarizing. Now, you guys have a chance to look at them. And do you have it before you at all by chance, Mark?
Well, I can't look at this. No, I didn't print it out, so I can't
do both of them. And the reason you don't have it is because you didn't come in the studio.
That's
because
right.
If you were in the studio, our guy John B always makes sure that we have.
Oh, he's on top of it, man.
All right, so I'm just going to share with our listeners really quick what this Pew Research says are the most 7 polarizing topics that we have. Now, understand that public opinion differs from political opinion to some great degree, and here we're talking. Largely, we're kind of talking about both, but it's really defined based upon political perception and opinion. So, top 7: climate change, environmental protections, guns, military, immigration, education, and number 7 is healthcare costs. All right, off the top.
I'm surprised wasn't on there was abortion.
That's what I was going to ask you. What were you going to say?
I would have thought that was one of the top few, to be honest.
Which one was it? What was it?
Abortion.
Yeah,
I would have thought that would have been in the top.
Well, considering that this is, go ahead.
I think here in Michigan, it definitely would have been. It's a much bigger, especially in the last election cycle, it was a much bigger issue here in Michigan than it was kind of around the rest of the country. I believe even in Illinois, where some of our listeners are. I think that in Michigan, it was highlighted a lot more.
No, and I would agree. I think certain states would consider it would be probably in the top 5 in certain states. But as a nation, I guess we're looking at those issues. Shout out to Polar Nights in Norway. So welcome to the conversation. But I wanted to look at these. Is there anything that you were surprised that wasn't in here? So Mark said that he was surprised at abortion. I didn't think about abortion, Mark, because I guess it's something that we're no longer thinking about, I guess, anymore.
Yeah, we are. Now it's a state battleground issue, not a federal battleground issue.
Okay, yeah, absolutely right. And we're gonna. I got a good conversation about that. But go ahead. What do you say?
I would like to see infrastructure on here. Just my own political opinions that crumbling infrastructure is something we should take care of. But I understand that not everybody's looking at that, and there are much more polarizing issues on there. Well, are these the top polarizing issues? Oh yeah, these are the top polarizing. These aren't the top issues.
Not the top issues.
Okay,
but the issues by which Americans are polarized by.
Yeah. I think everyone agrees we need better infrauditor.
I think we can agree.
No, I think it's one of the agree. Yeah.
Stop investing in the roads.
Rod McCullough, because of the way U.S. history is taught, many in the larger demographic have no respect for contributions and sacrifices of those in minority populations. We agree. Can I read that next Okay, we have an opinion here from Norway. This is so refreshing to hear 3 normal Americans. Polar Nights, I'm sorry. There's only one normal American here. These other 2 are not normal Americans. 3 normal Americans for a change. I need to stop watching Fox News.
Yeah, well, Fox and News is an oxymoron. So
I'm sorry. I was watching today. Mark, you sent me an article, and this is completely going somewhere else, but we're gonna walk with this. You sent me an article, Mark, about why America remains so angry.
Mm-hmm.
That was you who sent that to me, correct?
Yes, it was. It was actually a little video clip of Sarah Silverman on the Daily Show, I think it was. So
yeah. So and so she was saying that the reason we're so angry is because of the news that we listen to. And so based upon whatever it is that you're listening to, and I guess Fox was kind of the leader out there. Oh, this next thing is going to make you really angry. Oh, this next thing is really going to boil your bubble, burst your bubble or whatever. And so we listen to these because those are great catchphrases to lead off any segment. And then we get angry and we're surprised that we're angry after listening to this craziness. It appears to me, and I don't know if this is always, are we lacking real honest journalism? Is that something that
I think so. I mean, again, to kind of paraphrase Sarah's bit, it was a 9-minute bit. She gave 3 reasons. One was social media and the fact that they have these algorithms that basically keep feeding you what you just looked at. So there's an echo chamber and you don't hear different opinions. The second was around the news, and again, she used Fox as an example, but they all do it, where it's basically, opinion pieces versus actual objective journalism. And the third she gave was politicians, where basically it helps kind of feed their coffers to use kind of scare tactics, fear tactics. And so, and I 100% agree with what she's saying.
If you would go back and we would go back to 2020, and maybe we should take a look at this and do this. Because I went back and after you sent me that text, I said, let me take a look. Let me reset. I'm going to go back to 2020. We all know what was happening in 2020. George Floyd, social justice, cries against police reform, all of these things, right? There were very carved out, I have a myriad of thoughts and opinions and views on all of this stuff, right? But there were carved out, if you go back and look, 2 very clear opinions on every single issue that I just addressed. And you either here or you were either here. And those were the 2 opinions that we saw taking place on most mainstream media platforms. And so, Mark, when you said that, I said, oh my goodness, the media is making us angry and hate each other, because we understand that we're not black or white. And Mark, and this is the thing that we've come to understand. And John, I think that in our conversations, we notice it as well, that we don't feel black or white about any particular thing. There's always these areas of gray matter that we never get a chance to discuss, and they don't show them on the news. But it's in those gray spaces that we really find places that we have commonalities at that can help us to really bridge what might be a third opinion, which is somewhere in the middle. Have you guys noticed that type of thing taking place in media?
It's been happening for a long time, honestly. I mean, ultimately, I think that's how Fox built their model, and they became a dominant. Now they all do it, so it's not just Fox at this point. But I think Fox started that way, of like, hey, news. The perception was news tends to be a little bit more liberal leaning. We're going to take a conservative slant, and they've gone all the way to now where there's almost no news on any of these stations. It's all, frankly, propaganda for either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, and the most effective tactic is scaring people, and that's what they use.
I'll tell you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who used to be a part of a fringe left right wing, right? She just said, and I thought this was so crazy, and this is completely different than where we were going to go, but I think that it's something that's important to talk about. She just said in one of her statements that basically that the United States should have a divorce party.
Which is just so ridiculous. I mean,
and then continue the conversation of the AK, the AK-47 being like our national gun in another conversation by another Republican. And I'm thinking, like, what planet are these people coming from? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous comment, I think. And to me, that almost disqualifies you from being a politician. Because the thing I've learned a long time ago is you'll never get large groups of people to agree on everything or anything. And the only way to accomplish something is to try to seek to understand where the other people are coming from and to try to find a compromise position. And so if you even look at, and take that faction, the left has its faction, but even within that faction, that's starting to splinter. And so in her mind, 10 years from now, you're going to have another divorce in the red states for the, more central Republican, centrist Republicans versus the, the crazy Republicans, and it's just, and I just used, frankly, a language there, crazy Republicans, which is an opinion word versus a statement of kind of fact.
Right.
So I think that a lot of this actually draws from the 24-hour news cycle. Like
100% agree.
Yeah.
They needed to fill time with something, and there's not. I work in news. I work in local news. There is not enough news to fill a 24-hour news cycle. So they fill it with opinions. They fill it with
commentary. Opinions,
What gets ratings? Well, what gets ratings is whatever keeps eyeballs glued to screens, and that is anger and rage and fury. And that is kind of the way in which, okay, so we get these two opinions on everything, and that's how we come up with the issues that you brought to this table is, well, you either fall in this camp or this camp, and if you're told that enough, you're going to choose a side.
Do you think that Americans, the majority of Americans, struggle the difference based upon how media and news is presented to us with what is fact and what is opinion?
I think they view it as, if it's on TV, it's fact. I think, unfortunately. And so they listen to a Tucker Carlson or pick, and I don't watch any of them, and there's a mirror image of him on CNN somewhere. Whatever they say, they take as fact.
Yeah. And Rod McCullough, he said, there's enough news, not just sensationalism. There's not enough news to keep people eyeballs. And that's what you were saying.
That's the issue.
We can talk about.
That's why Anchorman 2 is so funny. They actually talk about that, and, basically just making stuff up in essence to fill 24-hour news cycle. So.
Yeah, Miss Mary's cat is in the tree. That may be news, but it's not going to get eyeballs glued to the TV.
And the other thing that doesn't keep eyeballs glued to the TV or ears glued to the radio is if you hear the same story that you just heard 30 minutes ago, you're tuning out. It's okay. You've started to repeat.
Yeah.
You've started to repeat stories. I'm out of here.
Well, at least put some new faces on with the same stories, giving you a different twist.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of where we are. So I want to talk about some of these issues because I think that they're important. To discuss, are we really as polarized as we think? Because when I look at this first one, which is climate change that we talked about, I'm going to read what it has here. A majority of Americans say climate change should be a top priority for Congress and the president, marking a 14% increase from 4 years ago, and this was written in 2020. But the concern is not bipartisan. 78% of Democrats call it a top policy priority in 2020 compared to just 21% of Republicans. Recent polls conducted by CBS News found that 50% of Republicans under the age of 45 said climate change is a crisis, serious problem, compared to 26% of those older than 45. So is this something that we are, first of all, where are you at on climate change? Do you think it's a real thing, or is this something that we're just kind of creating and the earth goes through cycles? Which one is it, John?
For me, I think that there is certainly a human contribution to it. I think that we're coming out of an ice age, so I think we're going to warm up. I'm not sure how much of a human contribution there is to it, but I think that the U.S. we've done so much when it comes to this, and it's a global thing, and no one else is being held accountable. The U.S. has become kind of the punching bag for a lot of these issues as it comes to even guns, military, some of the other issues on here. It's you're not doing enough, United States. Whereas you look at China, you look at India, you look at some of those countries farther east, and you start to see way more pollution, even per capita.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that okay, you first.
All right, so you first meaning what? That the United States should take a step back, not make it a priority, and until other nations are getting on board with doing something different? What do you mean?
I think that there's a lot of external pressure, international pressure when it comes to this thing. And it's like, okay, you step up to the plate trying to put on us. When it comes to us in our own country, which is really all that matters for the purposes of this conversation, I don't know. I think everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think that more government is generally not a good thing. That's where I stand on that in that regard. That's as far as I'll go.
Polar Knight said, "This darn climate change. We get snow in Norway, sun in Mexico. What is next? Ice at the North Pole." That's funny.
Polar Knights might want Norway to turn to Mexico. I don't know. Although the Norwegians, I've been there a couple times. They love to ski, so maybe they don't want to turn to Mexico. I was surprised to see this on the list. Frankly, as high as it was, I don't view this as again, my personal thing is I don't view that as hugely divisive, not nearly as much as some of the other issues. I do think I have an opinion somewhat similar to Jonathan's, maybe a little more. I do think man has a lot to do with this. I don't know that it's the crisis of like some people paint it out to be that, in the next 3 years, the world's going to end if we don't do something. I think it's somewhere in between. The U.S. still is a large contributor of, carbon in the atmosphere, just simply because of the scale of our industries and everything else. But the reality is the U.S., if you look at it per capita and everything else, has been declining, whereas a lot of the countries that Jonathan's talking about have grown dramatically. I think this will get solved because of economics when it's all said and done. And, as other forms of energy generation become more economically viable, like solar energy, wind energy, nuclear energy, it will naturally, you'll naturally continue to see that this trend to trying to decarbonize the kind of the world.
It's interesting because I look at it and we understand that carbon gases are the biggest thing that contributes to this. If we were talking about global destabilization as it relates to climate change, and I look at countries like China, and I look at you've got half of the world's population in your country. Like, your existence creates global.
They do. They don't have and I 100% agree. They haven't been a good steward of any of this. The difference is they're not industrialized like we are. So a huge percentage of their population is still living like, people here lived 150 years ago, honestly.
No, I get it. But what they make up in industrialization, they definitely kill by population overload.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, if you look at it, they're probably, over the last decade or two, they're the worst actor by far.
Yeah. It's
human energy consumption.
We're nothing but, walking Putin carbon emissions. But go ahead, John. What were you going to say?
Well, and that's kind of where I talk about the international thing is there's no pressure being put on China to reform. They've been allowed to back out of all sorts of agreements, the Paris Accords being one, and just kind of, you keep doing your best, China. We're going to keep yelling at the United States to clean up their act. I don't know. It frustrates me.
This illusion that everybody uses to use the electric car is not possible. It is a transmission that doesn't happen overnight. I love to drive green, but it's just not possible.
Right. It's just like everyone wants to go away from the petrochemical, and that's not happening in any of our lifetimes. It's just no way. It's not going to happen that quickly. So.
Now, on this list, we have both climate change and environmental protections. I kind of see them as working together and being kind of two tales of the same story, and how they factor out. I do believe that, and this is one of the issues why I'm very way to the left, and it's kind of falls into this environmental protection thing. I think that there are certain places that we have to protect certain resources and habitats that we should, as citizens of the world, just protect. I don't think that we should drill in certain places. I think that even though there is the ability for us to have natural fuels that we could utilize and depend on, I really believe that there's certain places on the earth that should remain untouched by human hands as often as possible. What do you think about something like that, Mark?
Yeah, I just think, again, I'm more of a pragmatist, so I think there's a balance to all of that.
So you say drill, baby, drill?
Not necessarily. Again, it's a balance of kind of the needs versus and how safely can you drill. I mean, drilling today is a lot safer than it used to be. So, I would have to know what the very specific thing you're talking about, where you're talking about, and everything. So,
Jonathan, as a younger man and looking at where we are. Because I'll tell you, there is definitely a difference in, and maybe it's just a 40, 50-year difference that I'm experiencing, and the earth is going to, reset itself. But I remember growing up as a kid, snow started in October, and it was there until the end of March. And it did not snow and melt. It snowed, and then there was more snow, and there was snow packed up on the sides of the roads. And it just doesn't seem that we get those kinds of experiences, heat, temperature, storms, all of those things. As a younger person, what are your thoughts? And do you think that we're destroying our land, our country, our world? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to give you my thoughts, and then I'm going to throw a question back at you as an older person.
No, I can't answer it. Mark has to answer it if it's for an older person.
It's all relative. You're way old compared to Jonathan, Kareem. So,
excusez-moi. Go ahead.
I remember, that's my memory of winter as well, is that snow began and then winter happened and then the snow went away in spring, but it was constantly there. Like I said, I think we're coming out of an ice age. I certainly think that there is a component of humanity influencing that. I do not think that we are destroying our world. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think that any attempt to quote unquote go green hides behind not the way that hides behind.
Could not just go ahead anyways.
Think of windmill blades and how the wind turbine blades and how they need to be thrown out under a landfill and they don't decompose, or lithium mines for electric car batteries. We're ruining things no matter what we do, and trying to pretend that one is better than another is kind of stupid. But my question to you, and I guess Mark,
as a more mature and an older man, I can accept that. Yeah. Go ahead. What's your question?
How many years have you lived through where it was predicted that the world would end in this year, or by this year, California would be gone because of the rising sea level? How many years worth of predictions have you?
I think there's always a fringe of the community that thinks that. And so forever, ever since the beginning of time, there's been a certain percentage of the population that's going like the world's going to end. Yeah.
But Mark, to the point, we also, those statements aren't fully just kind of just created, just created out of thin air. When you look at how our plates are created, you look at things such as the Ring of Fire, you look at where, those things. And so it shows a possibility that one day, like the situation you use as California could become, especially Los Angeles, could become a real thing. And that some of that is based on science. But I do agree that there is, we just survived Donald, the world is still here. I do think that there is a part of it that is just kind of pure conjecture that people just kind of say it's doomsday theory, if you would. So I think that that's true. One of the things that I think is very important, though, is that I have hopes for the human. This is what scares me: AI, artificial intelligence. That computers are becoming more real. What happens when we trust in technology and technology fails us? I hear you, Polar Knights. I have hopes for the human race, and I have hopes too. What's that, Mark?
I said I do too. Yes, I believe in humans.
Mark believes in humans. John believes in.
I believe in human stupidity.
I believe in the goodness of humans.
I believe I have a wit with me now on my phone. I got you. I believe that humans are going to continually do what best serves them. I believe that human stupidity is often us just trying to make sense of the realities of the world. But my ultimate faith is in God, the higher power. And I pray that we as Americans, we understand the things that divide us are really just things that are put out there by media to keep us in our corners and stop talking. We're signing off. God bless you all. Grace and peace.